Years ago, I watched mobile apps replace websites in markets where websites once dominated. It wasn't about better code, it was about competitive pressure. Porter's Five Forces explains why that happens. Enjoy. In this session, I want to look at Porter's Five Forces, a classic competitive analysis technique. It's often taught in strategy lectures, but in my experience, it becomes very practical when you're working on digital products or transformation programs. Years ago, I built websites to fund my first degree. Over time, I watched apps replace websites almost entirely in certain markets. That wasn't theoretical, it was commercial pressure at work. Porter's Five Forces model helps us understand those pressures.
What's the technique?
Porter's Five Forces examines the competitive intensity within an industry. The five forces are competitive rivalry, threat of new entrants, threat of substitutes, bargaining power of buyers, bargaining power of suppliers. Unlike Pestle and Pestle analysis, which looks at macro environment forces, Porter's model focuses on industry-level competition. It asks, how hard is it to make money here? For business analysts, this can shape product requirements and differentiation thinking. For project managers, it can expose risks to the business case and highlight assumptions around marketplace. In other words, are we building something in a stable market or in a battlefield?
Putting the technique into practice.
So let's look at how we can put it into practice. First of all, to use Porter's Five Forces effectively, you need to decide which industry you're operating within. In my earlier Pestle analysis training, we talked about our social app company targeting young users. The next step is to have an appreciation of the organisations or people involved in the industry, and a clear sense as possible to the substitute products that are available or could emerge. In our social app example, competitive rivalry is intense. There's many platforms, apps and websites competing for information and competing for attention, and user loyalty is low. The threat of new entrants is high. Barriers to entry for app development are relatively low compared to physical industries, and the threat of substitutes is also high. In my experience, websites were once the dominant format for digital presence, then apps emerged as a substitute, and in some markets they displaced websites almost entirely. Substitutes don't always look identical, they just solve the problem differently. Furthermore, substitutes can be hard to spot, which is why we need industry awareness of emerging technologies. Bargaining power of suppliers might include app stores, cloud hosting providers, or even advertisers funding the model. And if platform policies change, your margins can change overnight. Bargaining power of buyers, in this case users, is significant. Switching costs are minimal for them. If users don't like your features, they leave. When you map these forces together, you can see something important. This is not a stable, protected industry. It's structurally volatile, and that volatility should influence your roadmap, investment pace, and risk appetite. In my experience, Porter's Five Forces stops you becoming overconfident about your product. You might have excellent features, you might have a motivated team, but if you are operating in an industry with low barriers to entry that could displace you, powerful platforms that can do the job better, in this case apps on mobile devices, than desktop websites, and high substitution risk with which your consumers can easily replace your product, your project assumptions need to reflect that reality. Like Pestle, this isn't about filling in a diagram. It's about understanding the forces acting on your organisation and making sure your delivery plans do not build on optimistic assumptions. Thank you.